Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing my own father, Rich Goldszer. He's a professional engineer, professional surveyor, and this will be the breakdown of professional surveying in cinema.
Okay.
Henrikla! Henrikla! The war is over. Goldszer.
What the communist won?
Your war, my friend. Germany has surrendered.
Tenzin!
Where are you going?
Back home. Austria.
The instrument he had was a theodolite. It measures angles. He had it zeroed for acting as a level. This looked like a transit that was being used as a level.
Incredibly confusing.
Sorry.
So did you buy him as a surveyor? Do you think he looked like he knew what he was doing?
That was totally believable.
Awesome.
Yes, he was using the instrument correctly for one of its uses. I didn't get much look at the rod that was being used. It looked kind of a makeshift situation that they just took a stick and put some gradations on it, which is fine, as long as it's accurate.
Mr. Fifield, let's get a grid of the structure. I want the whole interior.
If there's anything in here worth looking at, these pups will find them.
Pops.
Yeah, pups. My pups. Prometheus, we are now mapping.
Copy that.
Decompose grid.
Well, I'll be damned.
Okay, this is very futuristic, advancing beyond a technology that exists today. The current technology, it takes slices, and then the instrument rotates very slowly around on its axis till it gets to 360 degrees, and then you get a map of all the objects 360 degrees in a room, in a building, and you can find out where the pipes are in a building. But it's very slow, and it's very, very useful for industry. Now this, what I saw here, takes it to a whole other future level where these mapping devices are actually moving. They're like drones.
And no visible propulsion system.
Yeah, what was making them fly? Gyroscopes and magnets and I don't know.
These mountains have defeated every invader. This is where the Britons fled when they were invaded by the Romans, the Angles, the Saxons, the Vikings, the Normans. Oh, yes, they all invaded this island of Britain, but they've never taken the mountains from us. They've never taken ancient Britain.
My God, those last stretches are steeper than they look. I hardly think that your pedometer reading will be much use.
Well, not much, but nevertheless.
So, can you see either of our trig points from here?
No. But I can see those two men again.
He mentioned two things, a pedometer and trig points. So the pedometer is used today to determine how many steps you take and how much energy and calories you're burning. Surveyors have a way of establishing their pace. So you set up an area that's 100 feet long and you begin to walk over it at a normal pace, and you find out that your pace is 2.5, 2.4, 2.6 feet for each pace. He has a pedometer that's already set for his pace, and as he's walking, He knows how many paces, and he multiplies that by the number of feet per pace, and he gets a distance, or height in this case. Problem is that he's walking up a steep hill, and so the guy that's lying down was saying, I don't think your pedometer is going to work because he's walking up so steep hill. The other thing was the trig points. So in surveying in Europe, they use, as they do out in the west of the United States, they use triangulation to establish horizontal control, to know where you are on the earth, as well as latitude and longitude for the basics. But in advance, they set up a point on a mountaintop, and another point on a mountaintop, and a third one, and then they measure the distances between, and they use geometry for triangles, and they build triangles off of triangles like a geodesic dome, and that's their control. Those are control points. He needs to see those other 2 points in order to establish a triangle, and then you know the 3 angles in between the triangle, and you can get the distances.
Well, what's the result?
Oh, please, we have hours of calculations ahead of us.
I'm afraid you'll have to be a little patient, but we should know this evening.
Now, excuse me, gentlemen.
Oh, thank you.
Please be careful.
And how do you know later?
Well, we've made measurements with those 2 hills, and we already know the height of Newton Beacon and Whitchurch Hill.
But how were they measured?
The same way, by comparing them with other hills.
But who measured the first hill? Oh, God, my boy, God.
However, just before this film was made, the mountain was remeasured and found to be 997 feet. Thus, the mound had settled back into a hill.
You saw they were bringing the dirt.
Yes. Yeah, that's how they yeah, that's a good solution. I'm going to make the mountain higher until the rains come and wash the dirt away. The instrument that I saw was similar to the one Brad Pitt was using. That was also a theodolite, which is an instrument that was used in the 1900s and the middle 1900s. And afterwards, then we started using what's called a total station, which measures both distances and angles. It was a beautiful gold transit, by the way. That would be valuable if you had that one.
Would an individual surveyor like you own something like that?
Yes, surveyors own several total stations. There's robotic and non-robotic total stations. The robotic total stations you set up, and then you go with your prism, which is the modern version of the rod, and the total station looks for you and then measures a distance and an angle to you by itself. Just sits there by itself, and it finds you, and it measures it, and then you move to another point, and it beeps, and it gets the other point. It's a robotic total station. It costs about $20,000. And the non-robotic total station today costs about $10,000. And that one requires an instrument man to be sitting behind it, and he points towards you, and he finds you, and he focuses, and then he pushes the button to record the angle and the distance to you. And that's a lot slower. But the robotic total station has a drawback in that you're leaving it in one spot and you're not there to guard it. And in places like Detroit or maybe Pittsburgh, yeah, it is susceptible to
20 G's
to theft.
Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
There's some solutions to that, but the robotic total station is typically used out in the woods. It was very interesting and profound that they were talking about, well, what did you measure off of? What was the previous hill? How do you know what the height of this is? Well, you know the height of this from the previous hill. The topic of that snippet was vertical control and benchmarks.
.62.
8.62.
Okay, Brownie. Take a turn in that rock over there.
How about knocking off for lunch?
We'll get the shot and we'll quit.
Why don't we finish off the whole section first?
What's your hurry?
Well, you said something about a deadline.
Thought I was a slave driver in this outfit. $7.63.
7.63.
I guess I owe you an apology. You certainly don't melt in the rain. Your work has been very satisfactory, too.
Thank you.
Well, let's duck under that tree over there and eat our lunch.
That's why I like surveying. You see, I'm the outdoor type. When I got mustered out of the Army, I could have had a job in an insurance office. Chief will tell you. More money, regular hours, desk I can put my feet up on. Nothing doing. I'll take the rugged life every time.
Oh, I see.
As a matter of fact, I'm the same way about women. Nah, none of those frail blondes for me. You know the kind. They expect you to call a taxi cab if you ask them to walk more than 3 blocks. Now, wouldn't you think they'd make matches at a light?
Yeah, the outdoor type. Yeah, let me try to dry your jacket off.
Very cute.
Yeah, good scene, right?
He was using a transit as a level. He asked for a turn. So he leaves the location where he knows the elevation, and he goes somewhere else and takes a screwdriver and pounds it into the ground. And then he holds the rod on top of the screwdriver and asks for a reading there. And when he gets the reading there, that establishes the elevation on top of the screwdriver. And he also knows the elevation of the previous point. So then the instrument man is able to go to a third location. It's called a bench loop, elevation determination, at a third location that he couldn't see from the first location. So that's called a turn. The young man was very happy to be working outdoors and trying to impress the lady that he's an outdoors type. He wasn't doing a very good job by not being able to light a match.
Huh.
Was the joke there, and she did it by herself. So he was bragging and saying that he's the outdoors type, and that's why he got into surveying, which is a story very much like mine. I got into surveying. I soon learned that there's, quote unquote, no money in it. It's a lot of fun. You're out in the woods. There's owls. There's bees. There's thorns. You have to fight nature all the time. And there's not a lot of businessmen or people to give you a lot of trouble. You're collecting data out in nature. I always liked math and science, and I was into scouting, and I learned about pioneering and building rope bridges. If you can't see each other, you have to move, or you have to cut brush. You have to go along the line where you are. Yeah, knock down that little branch there. And you have different devices, machetes and different axes and tools in order to cut brush.
But like, not everything is cuttable. I mean, you can't just like cut down random
little
trees
stuff.
out in the
No, you
woods.
wouldn't try to look through where there's a tree or a big tree branch. You're looking through where there's bushes and understory. Back in the 1800s, when Thomas Jefferson ordered the land to be surveyed, the instruments were quite different. We didn't have a steel tape. We didn't have a cloth tape. We had chains. Chains had links. Each link was 8.64 inches. 100 links was 66 feet. And that's why the width of the roads are 66 feet. And the acre and everything is all based on links and chains. And when you look at the old plat maps, you'll see it has the number of chains, not the number of feet. When Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, Abraham Lincoln were around, 3 guys that are on Mount Rushmore, surveying was a profession like medicine and law. That was the good profession because it required the math and the science and to know the trigonometry to do the measurements. Surveyors, we call Mount Rushmore, 3 surveyors and another guy.
So the 2 things that we mentioned that we got caught up on, one was the LiDAR was kind of the most similar technology that currently exists that's similar to the Prometheus tech, where we had those, I guess they called them POPs, that were like these drones that were using to map the tunnel systems. And then you had some other technical corrections, something about different types of leveling.
Yes, different types of leveling. We saw them doing direct leveling, where you look at a rod that has gradations and starts at 0 at the bottom and goes up to 6, and it folds to 12 and maybe 18 feet.
How much rod do you have?
Usually you only have 12 feet, so that's why you need a turn. If you
It's
go
an
down a steep hill,
it's like an intermittent.
the rod is about 6 feet tall.
Yep.
And then the back of it slides up and forms another 6 feet, and you tighten it down so it can be 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
But they also have Philadelphia type. That's a Philadelphia rod. Then they have a telescoping rod that can go up to 25 feet. So then you need less turns, but usually you find brush or trees that are in the way, so you need a turn anyway.
So the turn is
And when you go 25 feet with a rod, you're waving around on there, and you're not getting a good reading.
Right. And so you would need a turn every 12 feet of elevation at minimum if you have a 12-foot rod.
Another way of leveling that I didn't mention was stadia, and the gradations that you saw in the eye finder and the eyepiece of that one video that we saw. There's a vertical line with crosshairs, and there's a way to focus that and make the crosshairs nice and crisp and dark. And those are used for stadia leveling. There, the rod doesn't have gradations on it of 0 to 12 feet. It has a different.
It can measure based on the focus. So if you turn it a certain number of screws to focus it, it knows how far away it is.
Well,
so it uses optics.
The eyepiece gradations.
Yeah.
You're looking 3.5 up. So you use the eyepiece to determine the difference in elevation instead of the rod.
Got it. All right, one of my favorite movies, There Will Be Blood. Doesn't sound right.
He's sliding it up right there.
Yeah.
I told you can slide it up and lock it in
That
place.
was the extension?
Yes.
The Philadelphia
He's making
style.
the 6 into 12.
Yep. And then the marker here?
Yes. So you have to mark where you took the elevation for mapping, and here he is with not a clinometer, but another device that's used to get a vertical angle. So he's getting the vertical angle in order to establish the horizontal plane surveying is. And I believe he has a level this time instead of just a transit. I think this is a level. But I don't see the device that he's using to measure distances. I don't see his tape.
When he's pounding these in?
Yes, he knows where those are, and he can make a map.
This is his property he's marking out or something?
Maybe, yes. Or it's a traverse point, and he's going to come back later and say where his property is. You measure to these points, then you go back in the office, and you use coordinate geometry, COGO, and you know where those points are, and then you know where the perimeter points are, and you go from one to the other. So I think that's it. Oh. This is funny. He's just putting the point on the map.
Yeah. He's making deals with all these bigwigs.
Again, he was doing leveling. I didn't see any horizontal angles being turned. He had the transit level. If there were angles being turned, he could point up or down, and he would turn, and he didn't do any of that. He was just, and that also it was a leveling rod. But I've noticed that none of the actors have been holding the leveling rod correctly. You stand behind the level rod. This is what you learn when you just start off being a surveyor, a grunt. And you stand behind it, and you hold your fingers on the side of the rod very loosely so that it plumbs itself. So that you let go, like when you're driving and your car is very well aligned, then you can let go of the steering wheel You're not supposed to do that, but you could, and you would continue in a straight line. The same with holding the rod. You hold it and you balance the rod so it's plumb. So if you let go, it still stays pretty much where it is. Then it's plumb. And you stand behind it and look at the instrument man. Why do you do that? If you can see him, he can see you.
Sure.
All right. If you're standing to the side, then you don't know. He's yelling at you. No, I can't see you. Knock down the one branch.
Right.
So, and also you have to know about where he is, whether he's 6 feet up or 1 foot up. And then you give him a wave. So you touch it from the side and have it plumb, but then you lean it forward slowly and backward slowly. And he's looking through the instrument and he can see the lowest reading. The lowest reading is when you lean forward, you're at an angle. So you can get a higher reading. When you lean back, you get a higher reading because the rod is at an angle. And he's looking for when you pass through the shortest reading, and he writes down the shortest reading, 7.24, not 7.25.
Makes sense, yeah. I mean, the precision, I imagine, would need to be really, really high, because any error in the measurement is going to be amplified,
compounded, yes,
over time.
yes.
So as you continue to make measurements, one little mistake is just going to keep on
There's several
growing.
types of error in surveying, but yes, that's one of them. And then you're passing the information on to the engineers who are doing calculations. So if you give them bad information, it's going to the road's not going to be built correctly in the correct location.
Uvanga Walter Russell. Kapianyani. Nunanasi Nunanu. Nurai Aglumat.
Okay, there's a transit. You can measure angles, vertical angles, horizontal angles, and there's the rod. Oh, that's a very good view of the rod.
Did he do a wave? It looked like a wave.
No, he was focusing. The instrument was focusing. And that was a good view of the rod. The rod has red and black and a little arrow on the top. Uh-oh. She's stealing and breaking it, and uh-oh.
Huh?
Hey, get down from there.
What are you doing? Show you.
Does this guy look like a surveyor?
Yes.
You smoke a pipe like that when you're out in the
Surveyors
field?
have to deal with Indians and bees and owls. The kid's just interested, so he's showing them.
You mean holy
He can see
cow.
far. It's a telescope.
Boy.
Oh boy?
Holy boy.
Holy boy.
Holy boy.
Holy boy. Maybe he sees a holy boy way out there.
No, it looks more than 12 feet.
Measuring distance.
Yeah. That rod is
Holy boy.
distance. Right. So the distance has to be with stadia. Because he doesn't have a tape. But that was a good view of the rod. And then he has to carry the stakes, and the equipment. You carry it over your shoulder like that is one of the easiest ways.
So
You got to make sure it's on there good.
this is all believable.
Yes, for, I don't know, the early 1900s, mid 1900s.
What is that little device that Daniel Day-Lewis is holding?
Yes, that's called a Abney level. It's very inexpensive, and it's a rough idea of the vertical angle. And another instrument is called the clinometer, and that's a different shape, but it also measures the cross slope. As you're walking along, you have a hillside down, you have a hillside up. You look down, and you're 4%, 7%, 10% is very steep, and you look up, and you can get the percent slope up and down as you're running along the side of a mountain. So then you know the steepness of the mountain. If you want to build a road there, then you know whether you have to move a lot of dirt to have the fill on the downhill side, and they cut on the uphill side, or if the road is flat, you don't have to do much at all.
The steepest road in the contiguous 50 states is right across the street. Have I taken you there yet?
That's longitudinal slope. I'm talking about cross slope. It's transverse slope. So anyway, yes, we come up that street to get to your house.
No, I got a even worse one for you.
Even worse than that. That one's vertical. Okay, here we go. These are rope pullers. Finally, we have rope pullers. Yeah, I've been waiting for that.
Looking at the model of the bridge, right?
Mm-hmm. He's carrying beams and girders and tracks for the rail.
Molten steel.
And he's going to put in rivets and pound down the rivets like you have in your eyeglasses and the temples of your eyeglasses.
Here's Val Kilmer, the engineer. Isn't that great that there's movies with engineers that are heroes?
Yeah, this is like building the pyramids with the Egyptians. You have to work in teamwork. They were pulling on a rope that had white flags all over it. So those white flags are like the ancient chains that were used to measure in the 1830s when Thomas Jefferson instructed the surveyors to survey the land to pay the soldiers in the Revolutionary War with land, 640 acres and a mule, that type of thing. And the land had to be surveyed in order to give each officer the allotted amount of land. And so Thomas Jefferson wrote the instructions, and the surveyors went out and followed his instructions. That's called the Public Land Survey System, PLSS. And that's what all of the surveying in the Northeast states, the original 13 colonies, is all based on the Public Land Survey System, which has meridians, or north-south, and baseline, a baseline and a meridian in each state. And the baseline and meridian come together in Michigan at called the initial point, and each state has an initial point. So the baseline goes east-west. And how do you determine that? Well, you take your compass and you find out what north is, and then you turn 90 degrees. That's east. And you flop the instrument, which is taking it over the top and onto the other side, but leaving the angle set where it is, and that's due west. So you start at the initial point, and you take a magnetic measurement north, and then you turn 90 degrees, and you go along the baseline road. It's 8 Mile Road in outside of Detroit. It's the baseline for the surveying system. And this is the Public Land Survey System, how the land was turned into sections and townships and ranges, and how they decided who owns what land. And also when they measured these distances of 80 chains. I was telling you about before about the length of the chain, 66 feet. 40 chains is half a section. Another 40 chains, that becomes a mile. And then, so the rope pullers have little flags on their rope, and basically each flag is tied at a given distance, and they might have 50 of those, and so those are like links of the chain in what we use over here. So they're pulling, and they're pulling tight, because if the rope sags, you're not getting a good measurement.
Right.
So sometimes you have a full chain when you can pull tight, 66 feet, but other times you don't have a full chain. So you measure 3 full chains, and then you count the flags. And on a chain, they have a little tag on there that says 5 chains, 10 chains, 20 chains. And so they can count the flags, and they say 3 full rope pulls plus, whatever it is, 32 and a half. And then you convert that by the...
It's like a long tape measure.
Yes, it's an inch and tape measure without gradations. Yes. And finally, I saw some rope pullers. Rope pullers in Egypt started surveying. They measured from the center line of the Nile River to the side where the river would flood every year and spread the good soil out.
And I believed it. Broke my land and sowed my crop. Built my barns and strung my fences
in the little border station. Tucked away below the foothills where the trails run out and stop. Till a voice, as bad as conscience, rang interminable changes on one everlasting whisper, day and night, repeated so. Something hidden. Go and find it. Go and look behind the ranges. Something lost behind the ranges. Lost and waiting for you. Go.
Clearing with a machete, like I was telling you about. Clearing.
Right. Yep.
You have to clear a line so you can see to the next point. Well, usually the head chainman has to clear the line and the instrument waits behind. Surveying, you fight the elements, bees and scorpions.
29 degrees. 16 minutes south of the equator. Good night. 16. Oh, the deadly looking snake here.
We might be a little bit too English for this jungle. Strangers in a strange land.
Oh, this is a cool scene. They find an opera in the middle of the jungle. How did he know where he was by looking through a surveying instrument?
The surveying instrument was not the surveying instrument you used to determine the latitude. I think he said 29 degrees, 16 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. Latitude and longitude are degrees, minutes, and seconds, because you have 360 degrees in the sphere, if you call the Earth a sphere, which it isn't, but spheroid. So he was looking through what's called a dumpy level. It was just a level. Remember before I told you they were using a theodolite as a level? Well, now this scene incorrectly used a dumpy level. It's just a level. It doesn't measure angles, vertical or horizontal. And it definitely doesn't measure the sun. But the sailors out in the sea, they had an Adelaide. They had a device where they could look up and they could see the sun. And from the sun and the position of the sun and your charts that you have in your ephemeris, you can determine where you are. That's how sailors determined where they were. And that's how you could, if you had a what I call an Adelaide.
Is that a sextant? Is that
sextant,
also?
Yes. You can look up and look at the North Star and the sun, and you can determine your latitude. I think he had the wrong instrument there, but people that watched didn't know the difference.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Right. And he didn't have any way of measuring distance either. Nowadays we have an instrument, like I was saying, it was a total station, which is a combination of the theodolite that measures the vertical and horizontal angles with a electronic distance meter, an EDM. Back in the day, they were very big and bulky, and you'd have to walk through the forest with a big suitcase. Nobody wanted to do that, but now they made them very small with technology, everything, and the laser beam goes out and comes back from the prism, and like I said, it measures the time, and the time lambda from the wavelength gives you the distance, as you know the wavelength. length and then the time. And so I think he was using the wrong instrument there, but nobody knew the difference. I don't know what they were doing, why they were determining what latitude they were at. I don't know how that helps anything. Surveying is taking measurements of the land, measuring the earth for a purpose. So you take out the correct instrument based on your purpose. Sometimes you're measuring the depth in a lake or an ocean. You have to have a different set of equipment if you're in a boat to measure down to know how far deep the water is. You're measuring the earth still, but it's underneath the water. Sometimes you need angles, horizontal angles and vertical angles, and sometimes you need a tape or a distance meter to know distances. So you use it for mapping. That's one thing. The ancient mariners came to the country, Christopher Columbus or Magellan, or the explorers of the New World, the Lewis and Clark expedition, and they would take notes. And one thing we did see in this scene was note taker. That's very important. You're collecting data. It's only as good as the note takers, and you keep it neat and organized, what day it was, what the temperature is, who's on the crew, and what the measurements are. And then you have to keep that book, because when you go home, all you have is that book and those notes. Nowadays, we have ways, it's by Bluetooth and everything, you can collect data and you can send it back to your office from the field.
Is the surveyor going to be completely replaced by drone technology?
I hope not. There's still decisions that have to be made that drones can't make. Drones can collect data. But after you collect the data, you have to process the data, and you have to decide, okay, we found an iron, we found a piece of rebar, 18 inches long, and the records say there is supposed to be a piece of rebar there. It had a cap on it from this surveyor. But you look at it with the other points that are in the ground, and you say, I think this one might have been knocked out by a lawnmower, and the resident, the homeowner, just went out when nobody was looking and he put it back in. So just because you find a expected point doesn't mean it's in the right place. So a surveyor with training has to close the traverse and see where are the weak points and which are the strong points, and decide, this one is off by 3 inches to the north and 1 or 2 inches to the east. We use hundredths, we don't use inches, but tenths and hundredths. So if you see a boundary survey, or what they call in Pittsburgh a staked survey, where there's stakes in the ground, it's not a mortgage survey, it's actually measuring the boundary of the property, then it'll sometimes say at the corner what they found iron, Fi, or found iron pipe. Sometimes it's a pipe that was put in the ground, so it's hollow in the center, it's a pipe, and it'll say how much it's off for the actual location. Found iron pipe, 0.2 N for north, 0.1 E for east or west, north or south, east or west. So somebody coming in to put in a fence has to see that point in the ground when they go to build the fence and know that that's not the corner of the property. Yeah. They have to move over west 2/10, south to know where to put the fence. So like I say, surveying is collecting data for a purpose. Sometimes it's to build a fence or to build a shed or to build a house. You have to know how far the required setbacks are, 25 feet from the road right away. Well, how do you measure that? Well, you have to have a boundary survey to know where the property corners are.
I feel like it would come up into the legal territory as well. So you'd interface with the law at several junctures, whether it was for like expert testimony or anything. Is that something that you've ever seen or gotten involved with? Do surveyors go into the court? And
many times, yes. There's a whole system of that, of surveyors going in to testify. And when I went to become a surveyor after being an engineer, I was able to use a lot of the courses that I had as a civil engineer. But what I was missing when I applied to the board of accreditation to become a surveyor, they said, well, yeah, you're okay, but you need 10 credit hours in Michigan surveying law. I was missing the law, exactly what you said, of precedence. There's the first person that splits off the land and records the deed has precedence and has ownership of that land. And then there's secondary and third and fourth if you came as the date of when you record. So when you have a survey done, you should pay the $16, $20, $30, whatever it is, to have your survey recorded at the county register of deeds. This is only those that count in the court of law. The ones you have in your drawer that you had a survey done, those don't count because the new surveyors don't know about those because they're not of record. They have to the surveyors go to the county to see what surveys have been done on the land and previously, and you have to honor those. Like I was saying about precedence, you have to honor the survey that came before you. I mean, if it's wrong, yeah, it's wrong, but usually it's not wrong, and you have to just match up to it.
We dealt with some of this when we were trying to sell our house, and we didn't have the survey, and it wasn't recorded. Nobody had ever sent it to the Register of Deeds, and so we had to pay some money, and somebody else had to come out and figure, get the information.
It's not much
new
money.
Owners, they wanted it.
It's not much money to have recorded, but there's a law in each state, and you have to know the laws of that particular state of whether or not you have to record a land survey. And typically the law states that you may record.
That must have been what happened. Yeah.
A survey.
Otherwise we could have just ordered it from
must. It doesn't say
state.
Must.
Yeah.
So surveyors, we try to get the law changed to say you must record the survey.
Right.
So that'd be a lot better control.
And you'd have more work. That's the same reason that the neurologists say, you must get a routine EEG before you discharge the patient.
It's not to get more work. It's to make the future work easier, that you know that there was a survey done, and you can rely on that survey and look for those irons in the field.
There's stories about things other than pipes and irons being used as markers, like
of course,
like a muffler or anything. Have you heard of anything
Pile
like that?
of rocks. Pile of rocks is a cairn. It was used in the old days. They didn't use that. And then also they would cut down cedar trees because cedar lasts a long time outside, untreated. And the original surveyors in 1833 would cut down a cedar tree and make a post and dig a hole and put the cedar post, like a fence post that you would use around your farm to keep the horses in, and put this post in and then engrave. There's an engraving tool, and it would say, you're in Township 1 North, Range 8 East, and this is the section corner of sections 28, 29, and 6 and 7.
But that doesn't last hundreds of years.
No, it's rare to find those now, but they do find some.
Huh.
Yes, an original section corner is very hard to find. More often, what you'll find is a line tree. When the surveyors were walking along, of course, there's trees in the way. So if there's a tree on line, then you take off part of the bark, not enough to kill the tree, and then you blaze into the side of the tree a mark that says this tree is on line between section 1 and section 2. Or whatever section it's on.
Right. Like what if there's a tree that's actually on the corner of the property? What do you do then? The tree is the property marker?
Like I said before, the property marker you put in can be 0.2 north and 0.3 east.
You cheat.
You don't cheat. You can't put a marker where there's a tree there.
Right.
So you're not cheating. You use a reference point. You say, okay, the real point is where the tree is, and you say that on your survey. And I put a iron in the ground that is 3.7 feet to the west of the center of the tree.
Interesting.
Or you use multiple ones, and then you can, if that tree gets cut down or falls down, which it probably will someday, then you can measure from the 2 points and swing tie and find out where the property corner is. Witnesses.
Any memorable stories from your career that you want to tell, or anything that stood out?
Sure. I started off as doing surveying in Oregon, and my survey crew chief, he gave me some clues. I didn't know what I was doing. I had some books that I had read, and he said, okay, Rich, when you're painting, because it would take lath. It was a piece of wood about 2 inches wide and a 1/4 inch thick and 3 feet long. and you mark where your points are with this lath, and you tie ribbon on it, and then you write 1 + 0, 0 as far along as you are on the traverse. When you paint, he said, make sure you're standing upwind. Because if you spray can with the paint and they're downwind.
Yeah. My hip hop friends know this already, I'm sure.
Because they're
anyone who's ever sprayed graffiti,
Yes.
knows this.
So they're in the city against a wall. This is out in the woods, and the wind is blowing. So what did I do the first time? I spray painted it. I was
into the wind.
downwind.
You spat into the wind.
I did. Yes. And in fact, almost everything he told me I did wrong. You're starting off, you learn by your mistakes. So the other thing he told me, we were walking with a metal tape. It's 100 feet long, and it's made out of metal that's about 1/4 inch wide and maybe 1 millimeter thick. It has all the gradations on it, and you hold it with a clamp, a special clamp, so you can hold it tight. And it's called a metal tape. It's called a chain. It doesn't have links in a chain like it used to be, but it's a metal tape. And you throw the chain once you know how, and you hold it as a ellipse, and then you twist it, and it becomes a figure 8 that folds into itself, right? And when you're walking through the woods, you have a leather strap around your wrist, and you're walking, and the whole tape is behind you. Well, there's things in the woods, branches and twigs and roots. So he told me, as you're walking along with the leather strap around your wrist, and you feel it, a tension, and it's starting to stop, like when you're fishing and you can feel a fish biting, don't keep walking because it's hit a snag. And if you keep walking, the chain will break.
Right.
So what do?
You kept walking, yeah. The line broke.
The line broke.
Yeah.
So when the line breaks, your equipment is broken, and you have to have equipment to repair it.
Right.
So you splice. You put a splice in. You put the 2 pieces of tape, but you have to stop, and you have to do this and make the repair. You don't have an extra tape.
Right.
It's a big, heavy thing, 100 feet long. Yeah. So you put a splice in, and you have a toolbox with you, and you wrap it around with metal, and you hammer it down so it's secure. And then he looks at you and said, I told you. It's kind of like the first time I went to go underwater with the tanks.
The scuba.
Yes, yeah. You do it wrong, okay? Mm-hmm. You're going to do it wrong the first time. You don't ride a bike the first time you get on it. So I had a lot of problems with surveying. And then they teach you about bees and ground bees and owls and nature. And they teach you about different trees, because not only are you measuring the earth, you're also recording the quality of the land. So the original surveyors in 1833 of the 13 colonies, they would write down, this is swampland. Nobody's ever going to want this.
Right.
Or
Miami.
Yes. Well, Miami's not part of the 13 colonies.
All right.
But anyway, yes.
Or most of Manhattan, most of Boston.
Or this is very steep. You can't farm here.
Yeah.
Or this is
Pittsburgh.
wooded. This is wooded with maple, and they
poplar grove, mature birch, mature cedar, whatever.
So surveyors aren't just measuring the land.
Yeah.
They are determining the quality of the land.
Yeah.
And so you want to give a general good land that he can farm, and maybe a lieutenant or a captain, he can get average land.
So you have to know about flora and fauna. You have to know a little forestry, which you learned, and you have to know a little bit about animals, animal tracks, maybe.
Okay. Well, mostly, the usability of the land for farming, so that you can live off of it. And there's a lot of surveying stories. Yeah, and there's a lot of surveying jokes.
All right, let's hear it.
Most
joke and we'll end.
Most of them can't be told in public
on national TV.
Yes. Right. And what do surveyors do with those instruments? Are they measuring the earth? No, they're looking at pretty girls far, far away. Yes. And it rains and you can't work and you're out in the field, and so you sit in the truck and you play cards until the rain goes away. Then you can get out and get a little work done. And then when you're done, you get back to the truck. And the most important thing is inventory.
Make sure you didn't lose your $40,000 instrument.
Yes, you're walking around in the woods, or even an abney, or even a clinometer is only 2 inches by 3 inches.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So you give each person their equipment, and you tell them they have to take care of it, and you don't fall on it, and even to the axe or the machete. All the equipment has to be accounted for at the end of the day, and then you can leave the woods where you are far, far away from the office. You're not going to go back there and find it.
Why should anyone go into this career?
You're measuring the earth. Think about that. Measuring the earth. This is tactile. You really are doing something. You're not pushing a pencil around in an office building or typing into a computer. You're really getting things done that require you to clear brush and fight against nature and not slip and fall down the mountaintop and not break the equipment. And it's very physical and real, and it's not in some outer space cloud. No.
It's tangible.
Yes. And you can get hurt, and you can learn ways that you not get hurt, and you can learn the different, like you said, the different birds. I mean, my crew chief, he could point over there and say, that's an eastern white pine, or that's a Douglas fir, just by the shape of the tree. And it's hundreds and hundreds, 3 football fields away. And he could know the different trees. Or he'd see a bird, and he'd know what kind of bird it is, the way it was flying, or the sound that it made. Yes. It's reality instead of in a book or on a computer. And you're getting something done. As I said, it's for a purpose. Maybe they'll build a bridge there. Maybe they'll build a road there. Maybe they'll build a shopping center there. You're actually, helping to employ people and progress and development. Or maybe you're building a dam so that it doesn't flood every year. It's rewarding. It's self-rewarding. Now, is it lucrative? Can you make a lot of money? Probably not when you're starting off. Maybe when you're an instrument man, and maybe, you're a crew chief, and you just keep the records. You do a little bit better. I started off as a GS 5 at $5 an hour. I started off for the Forest Service, and I worked my way up to an instrument man at GS 7, $7 an hour. And my aspirations to become the survey manager who stays in the office at GS 9. So that's why I decided to go into engineering. Because when you go and you take a 4-year degree in engineering, you can come back and you can still work in surveying, but you can make $11 an hour at GS 11. So you can jump from the $5. So there was an incentive that I wanted to have a family and be able to support them. If you want to stay as a surveyor, that's fine. There's low risk and you're not going to get sued. And the surveyor who's licensed, he could possibly get sued, but you're going to be fine. And you'll have enough beer money for the weekend. But on Monday, you're going to have to go back to work to get enough beer money for Friday.
Hey, that was awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
You should get into surveying. There's this wonderful program called the Certified Survey Technician Program, and it has an office track and a field track. You can work in the office on computers, drawing the boundary surveys, the data was collected in the field, and drawing the topographic surveys with the contours, all the elements. There's an office track, and then there's a field track where you can go out in the field and collect the data. And that's the Certified Survey Technician Program. I'm really a proponent of it as a professional survey to get more people to become survey technicians and help and support, because there's not enough people that are getting into this. And it's very hard to find with the COVID and everything, and it's hard to find workers in general. But CST.org, look into it. You can get a job. And it's not much money to take the program, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but you get a certificate like a 2-year degree. It's like a associate's degree. You have something besides your high school diploma where you can get a job, maybe in an office, drawing surveys on computers, using CAD, computer-aided drafting, and AutoCAD, and all these programs that are available out there. And you can get a good job, and you can get benefits, and you can support a family on it.
Thanks again, Dad. That was awesome. Done.
We talked about Abney. I didn't talk about Datum. It's okay. We did good. The other one, he says, God determines the height of the very first hill.
Oh, yeah.
No, datum. The datum determines the height of the first.